I'll do my best.
Good.
There was once a man who had a boat, and this boat gave him his living, for he worked as a ferryman, taking people and goods from one side of the great river to the other. And one day, at the end of a long day, he'd just finished dropping off his last passenger and was making his way back to his own home side of the river, when a great wall of water clambered down the river towards him. A terrible, sudden flood overtook him. He grabbed hold of his little boat and he grabbed it as hard as he could. He was terrified. He could do nothing against this huge wall, this torrential current. Down he went, down, tossed to the side of his boat, grabbing it, feeling the icy finger of fear in his heart. But what could he do? What could he do? He was going to be surely swept out to sea if he kept hold of his boat. But if he let it go, how would he make his humble living? Well, soon enough he had to decide, and he let go of his boat. He watched his day's takings rush down the river. He watched his future livelihood flying into the distance, and he swam to the edge. He walked, trudged the long way home, and he said to his wife and his children, "I'm sorry. I've lost all the money of the day, and I've lost, worse still, the boat. I have no way to make money. I have no way to support you all. I don't know what to do." "Well," said his wife, "we have a great gift, and that is that you are alive. A boat can be rebuilt. You cannot." "A boat can be rebuilt," he thought to himself. "It can." So the very next day, he took up his axe and he said goodbye to his family and went into the forest to find the perfect tree to carve his new boat. He looked high and low. He walked and he walked and he walked, but all of the trees seemed to be too narrow, too small, too curved, too knotted. He walked further than he had ever been into this forest and found not one tree that was good for a boat for him. Before he knew what had happened, the day was gone. Night was coming on. He knew it was too late for him to find his way home in the darkness. But stumbling through the shrubs and the bushes, he saw a little light, and there was a cottage, a tiny hut in the middle of the forest, and he made his way and he knocked on the door, hoping to beg for shelter for the night at least. And a little old man opened the door, and he explained what had happened and how he was far from home and lost. The old man bid him come inside. There was a little old woman, and he thought, how could a little old man and a little old woman live in this hut in the middle of a forest? There's no one around for miles. How do they survive? But they were very kind, and they let him stay. And he thought, well, their kindness is great, but my stomach is rumbling. I'm so hungry. Perhaps their kindness will stretch a little further. And he asked if perhaps he could have just a crust of bread, just something to fill his aching tummy. And they said, there will be food when there's food, but it's not now, so why don't you rest? All right, he lay down where he was bid and covered himself with the blanket, grateful for the shelter at least, but he was so hungry he couldn't sleep. And so it was with eyes half shut that he saw that little old man and that little old woman still pottering around. He thought, they must be hungry too. And he saw them fetch a bag and put it on the table through his lidded eyes, and they took a hat out. The old man put it on his head and said, "Go, go," whoosh, and disappeared. And the little old woman reached into the bag and took another hat and said, "Go, go," and whoosh, she disappeared too. Well, the man was curious. He ditched the blanket, found the bag, and reached inside, and there was another hat. Got nothing to lose, he thought. He put it on his head and said, "Go, go," and whoosh. He found himself in in a large room filled with beautiful smells. Oh, so many delicious things, so many food. It was a kitchen, it was a grand kitchen, and a nobleman's kitchen, and he saw there a platter of gold with amazing sculptures, tiny swans and a little unicorn, and it was laden with food. And he saw the little old man and the little old woman out of the corner of his eye, and there they were gobbling away at this food in this great king's kitchen. And he thought, that's how they can survive by themselves, and that's why they have no food themselves to share. Well, if you can't beat them, join them. And he started to gobble and gobble and gobble. And he noticed that the little old man, when he'd had his full, said, "Home, hat, home," and whoosh, disappeared. The little old woman, "Home, hat, home," whoosh, the same. Well, the man was not quite done yet, and he kept gobbling and gobbling, and he saw there was some wine, and he started drinking and eating, and eventually he was so full and so drunk, he decided he was just going to have a little bit of a rest. When all of a sudden the staff returned to the kitchen. They saw the mess that had been made of the food. They saw the wine drunk, and they saw him. They grabbed him. They shook him till his hat fell off. And they said, "We've got you, thief. Finally, you've been here for days, weeks, months. You've been stealing our food, and we've got you now." He was taken before the king, and he was terrified. "Aha," said the king. "You shall be tied to a tree and burnt. And so he was tied to a great straight tree, and he thought to himself, if only I'd found this tree in the first place, it would save me all this bother. But he was tied up, and they started bringing kindling and great logs, and as the jailer with the torch headed towards him, he said, a final wish, please." "Of course." "My old hat. Could you bring me my old hat? If I'm going to go, then I want to go with my hat on my head." His hat was brought before him, and as soon as it was on his head, he said, "Home, hat, home!" And whoosh, he and the tree to which he was tied ended up in his own garden. And his wife was very shocked. "Where you?" But she untied him, and he said, "Wife, here is the tree that I was looking for, a gift from God." And so it was. That is the end.